It was supposed to be a simple evening. I was sitting in a small corner cafe, sipping a cup of bitter black coffee, waiting for Megan to finish up her work dinner. I didn't usually keep tabs on her. I'm not the kind of guy who clocks his wife's every move, but something about tonight felt strange. Maybe it was the way she rushed out the door, claiming her boss had called her in last minute. Or maybe it was the way she didn't kiss me goodbye like she always did. The cafe was cozy, dimly lit, the kind of place where couples whispered over shared desserts and soft jazz played in the background. I come here on a whim to kill time. The plan was to surprise Megan afterward, maybe drive her home. She'd been stressed lately, and I thought it might be a nice gesture. That's when I heard her laugh. It wasn't the soft, sweet laugh I'd heard 1,000 times before. This one was sharper, more playful. I froze. My eyes darted toward the far corner of the cafe, where Megan sat, leaning forward over the table with a man I didn't recognize. Her hand rested lightly on his wrist, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. The way she looked at him, God, it hit me like a gut punch. That wasn't how you looked at a coworker or a friend. That was the kind of look you give someone when you want them. I stayed in my seat, heart pounding so loudly I thought people around me might hear it. My rational side screamed at me to calm down, to think it through, to not jump to conclusions. But then I heard her words, clear as day, carried over the quiet hum of the cafe. You're bad, she said, teasingly, her voice dripping with flirtation. If I didn't have him, I'd be all yours in a heartbeat. The man smirked. What's stopping you? Her laugh rang out again, and I felt something snap inside me. My legs moved on their own. Before I even realized what I was doing, I stood up and started walking toward them. Am I interrupting something? The look on Megan's face was worth 1,000 explanations. Her expression morphed from shock to guilt to anger in a matter of seconds. She jerked her hand away from his, straightened her posture, and plastered on the fakest smile I'd ever seen. Ryan, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? I repeated, my voice calm, but my mind was spinning. I could ask you the same thing. Thought you had a work dinner. The man, let's call him Mr. Slick, raised an eyebrow and leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the show. Megan shot him a glare before turning her attention back to me. This is a work dinner, she said, her voice clipped. Ryan, please don't embarrass me. Funny? I said, crossing my arms, because it didn't sound like work talk. In fact, it sounded more like... I paused, letting the word hang in the air. Flirting. Her face flushed red, but not in the way I'd hoped. Instead of guilt, she was furious. Are you spying on me now? Following me around like some jealous, insecure. Don't. I cut her off, my voice sharp. Don't you dare twist this around. I didn't even know you were here. So why don't you tell me who this is and what's really going on? The man chuckled, folding his arms behind his head like he was watching a sitcom. Name's Lucas, he said casually, not offering a handshake or anything else that would remotely indicate respect. Megan told me a lot about you. Nice to finally meet the infamous husband. Infamous. The word hung in the air like poison. Megan's eyes darted between Lucas and me, her mask of calm starting to crack. Lucas is just a friend. From work, she said quickly. You're making this into something it's not. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table, looking her dead in the eyes. Then why do I feel like the third wheel at my own wife's dinner? She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, she looked cornered. I straightened up, grabbed the back of an empty chair, and spun it around to sit down. You know what? Don't let me stop you. I'm all ears. Let's hear this work talk. Lucas laughed again, but this time it sounded nervous. Megan shot him a warning glance, then turned back to me with a forced calm. Ryan, this is ridiculous. We'll talk about this at home. No, I said firmly. We'll talk about it now. Unless there's something you don't want me to hear. Her silence was deafening. And in that moment, I realized the truth. Whatever she was about to say, whatever lie she was scrambling to come up with, I wouldn't believe it. Because deep down, I already knew. The silence at the table was thick enough to choke on. Megan fidgeted with her napkin, refusing to meet my eyes. Lucas, the smug bastard, just leaned back and gave me this knowing smirk, like he was proud of the mess he was sitting in. "Cat got your tongue, Megan?" I asked, leaning forward, my voice low but steady. "Or maybe you're just deciding which version of the lie to go with." Her head snapped up at that, her eyes flashing with anger. "Ryan, stop being dramatic," she hissed. "You're making a scene, and people are staring." I looked around the cafe. A couple of tables were glancing our way, curious but cautious, pretending not to eavesdrop. I didn't care. Let them hear. "I don't care who's staring," I said, my voice still calm but now laced with steel. "What I care about is why my wife, is sitting here, flirting with some guy like I don't exist." Lucas raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, man, chill. You're taking this way too seriously. Megan and I were just talking." "Talking," I repeated, turning my glare on him. "That's funny, because where I come from, I'd be yours in a heartbeat, doesn't sound like just talking." Megan froze. Her eyes widened, and I knew I'd hit my mark. "Ryan, you're twisting things," she snapped, her voice higher now, defensive. "You're taking something innocent and turning it into..." "Innocent?" I barked out a laugh, shaking my head. "You call this innocent? Megan, you've been sneaking around for weeks. You dress up like you're going to a gala just to work late. You guard your phone like it's the crown jewels. And now this? Sitting here with him while you're supposed to be at a work dinner? Do you think I'm stupid?" Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat for the first time, his confidence visibly cracking. "Megan," I said, my voice quieter now but no less intense. "Tell me the truth. Right here, right now. Are you cheating on me?" The question hung in the air like a grenade, and I could see her calculating, scrambling for an answer. "No," she said finally, her voice firm but her eyes betraying her. "I would never do that to you. Lucas and I are just friends." "You're overreacting." "Overreacting," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You're unbelievable." I turned to Lucas, who was suddenly very interested in the condensation on his water glass. "Hey Lucas, since you're such a good friend, maybe you can help clear this up. Are you and my wife just friends?" He hesitated, his smug facade crumbling under the weight of my stare. "Look, man, I don't want to get in the middle of your marital drama." "You're already in the middle of it," I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. "So why don't you grow a spine and tell the truth?" Megan jumped at the sound, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Ryan, stop it," she hissed. "This isn't the place for..." "This is exactly the place," I interrupted, standing up so I was towering over both of them. "Because I'm done being played. I'm done pretending everything's fine while you sneak around behind my back." I reached into my coat pocket, my hand closing around the small velvet box I'd been carrying for weeks. At first, I'd planned to give it to her on our anniversary. Then tonight, when I thought I'd pick her up and surprise her after dinner. But now, it felt like a curse instead of a gift. I pulled the box out and dropped it on the table between them. Megan's eyes flicked to it, confused at first, then horrified as realization dawned. "Happy early anniversary," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Go ahead, open it." She hesitated, her hands trembling as she reached for the box. When she opened it, her face went pale. Inside was a diamond bracelet, something I'd saved up for months to buy. It was supposed to be a symbol of how much I loved her, how much I believed in us. But now it was just a cruel reminder of how blind I'd been. "I bought that for you," I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay composed. "Because I thought we were worth it. I thought you were worth it." But clearly I was wrong. Megan's lips moved, but no sound came out. Lucas, for once, had the decency to look uncomfortable, his eyes darting between us like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I hope it was worth it," I said, taking a step back. "Whatever this is, whoever he is, I hope it was worth destroying everything we built together." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving the bracelet, the lies, and the shattered remains of my marriage behind me. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face as I stepped outside the cafe. My chest was tight, my heart racing, but my mind felt oddly clear. The sound of my shoes against the pavement echoed as I kept walking, no destination in mind. I didn't care where I ended up, as long as it was far away from her. I wanted to scream, punch something, break anything that would make the gnawing pain in my gut feel smaller. But all I did was keep walking, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, replaying the scene over and over in my head. Her laugh, that smug look on Lucas's face, the way she tried to gaslight me right there at the table, like I was some paranoid idiot instead of a man who just caught his wife in the act. I don't know how long I walked before my phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, but then I pulled it out and saw her name on the screen. Megan. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. I answered, my voice flat. What do you want? Ryan, where are you? She asked, her voice frantic. We need to talk. Talk? I laughed bitterly. Like we were just talking in the cafe? Please, just let me explain, she said, her voice breaking. You don't understand what's going on. Oh, I think I understand just fine, I snapped. But sure, Megan, enlighten me. What exactly am I misunderstanding? Was Lucas your new mentor? Your career coach? Or were you just planning your next work dinner with him? It's not like that, she cried. He means nothing to me, Ryan. I swear. It's not what it looked like. Then what the hell was it? I barked, stopping in my tracks. Because from where I was standing, it sure as hell looked like my wife was throwing away our marriage for some jerk in a cheap suit. She was silent for a moment, and I could hear her breathing unevenly on the other end. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost pleading. Can we please just talk about this at home? I can explain everything if you just let me. Explain what? I shot back. That you've been lying to me? That you've been sneaking around, flirting with another man while I'm at home like an idiot? Save your explanations, Megan. I've heard enough. I ended the call before she could respond, shoving the phone back into my pocket like it was tainted. But as much as I wanted to stay angry, there was this ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. A part of me still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation that would make sense. Something that would make this whole nightmare go away. But that hope was short-lived. When I finally made it home, the house was dark and quiet. The same house we'd built our life in. The same house where we'd spent years laughing, arguing, making plans for the future. Now it felt hollow. I walked into the living room, tossing my keys on the table, and that's when I noticed something. Megan's laptop was on the couch, half open. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but tonight was different. I hesitated, staring at it like it might explode. Then I sat down, flipped it open, and typed in the password I'd known for years. It unlocked without a hitch. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Just the usual clutter, work documents, emails, photos. But then I noticed a folder buried deep in her files, labeled with some innocuous name like Budget 2024. I clicked it, and my heart dropped. Inside were screenshots of text conversations, photos, videos, all with Lucas. The texts were damning. Late-night messages, dripping with flirtation and innuendo. Complaints about me. How I was too predictable. How I didn't understand her anymore. And then there were the pictures. A selfie of them at some rooftop bar, their faces close, his arms slung casually around her waist. Another of them in an office laughing at some private joke. And then the one that shattered any lingering doubts I had. A photo of them in a hotel room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her lips curled into a smirk, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. He stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, his grin as smug as ever. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. My stomach churned, and I thought I might actually be sick. There it was, the truth, the cold, ugly truth staring me in the face. And all I could think about was how I'd spent the last 10 years loving someone who could do this to me. The house was silent when she came home, but my mind was anything but. The evidence was still fresh, burned into my memory like acid. I sat on the couch, the laptop closed in front of me like a loaded weapon, waiting for the sound of her keys in the door. My hands were clenched into fists, my jaw tight. Finally, I heard the lock click. Ryan. Her voice was tentative, like she already knew she was stepping into a battlefield. I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the dark TV screen across from me, my reflection barely visible in the dim light. She walked into the living room slowly, her heels clicking against the hardwood. When she saw me, her face froze. "You came home," she said softly, like it was some kind of victory, like I should be proud of her for showing up at all. I stayed silent for a long moment, letting the weight of the tension sink into the room. Then I gestured at the laptop with a slow, deliberate movement. "Sit down." Her eyes flicked to the laptop, and I saw a flicker of panic flash across her face. "Ryan, sit down," I repeated, my voice steady but cold. She hesitated, then sat across from me, perched on the edge of the armchair like a bird ready to bolt. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my gaze locked on hers. "I want you to tell me the truth, Megan. No more excuses. No more lies. Just the truth. Right here. Right now." Her hands fidgeted in her lap. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her throat working like she was swallowing something bitter. Finally, she spoke. "I told you, Ryan. There's nothing going on. Lucas and I are just—" "Stop." I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. "I'm giving you one chance, Megan. One chance to come clean. Because if you lie to me again, I swear to God, you're going to regret it." Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. Not sympathy, not anger, not even pity. I was numb. I didn't mean for it to happen," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. There it was, the confession. I leaned back, the weight of her words settling over me like a heavy blanket. "How long? Ryan, please. How long?" I repeated, each word like a nail being driven into my chest. She looked down, her hands trembling in her lap. "A few months. A few months?" I echoed, laughing bitterly. "Wow, that's impressive, Megan. Really." And here I was thinking it might have been a one-time thing. "But no, you've been carrying this on for months." "It wasn't like that," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. I felt so lonely, Ryan. You've been so distant lately, and—" "Don't," I snapped, cutting her off again. "Don't you dare put this on me. Don't you dare make this about what I did or didn't do. I've been here, Megan. I've been here for you, for us, while you were off screwing around with him." Her tears spilled over, and she buried her face in her hands. But I didn't care. I didn't care about her tears or her excuses or whatever pathetic justifications she thought would make this okay. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, my voice low. "It's not even the betrayal. It's the fact that you had the audacity to let me sit here, day after day, loving you, trusting you, while you were doing this behind my back. You made me look like a fool, Megan. A goddamn fool." She sobbed into her hands, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The floodgates were open now, and everything I'd been holding in came pouring out. "I saved for that bracelet for months," I said, my voice shaking. "I planned this whole thing for our anniversary because I thought we were worth it. I thought you were worth it. But no, you were too busy with Lucas to give a damn about what we had." She finally looked up, her face streaked with tears, her makeup smudged. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry, Ryan. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you I wasn't happy." "Wasn't happy?" I repeated, my voice rising. "And cheating on me was your solution? You couldn't just talk to me, Megan? You couldn't just say, 'Hey, I'm not happy. Let's fix this'? No, you had to go behind my back and destroy everything instead." She shook her head, her tears falling harder. "I didn't want to destroy us, Ryan. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But I love you. I swear I love you." "Love me?" I said, laughing bitterly. "You don't love me, Megan. You love the life I gave you. The stability. The comfort. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have thrown away 10 years for a fling with some loser who doesn't even respect you enough to stay quiet when your husband confronts you in public." Her sobs filled the room, but I couldn't bring myself to care. "Not anymore. You made your choice," I said, standing up, "and now I'm making mine." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide and desperate. "Ryan, no. Please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can. It's too late, Megan, I said, my voice cold. You already broke us. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving her sitting there in a puddle of her own guilt and regret. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't coming back. The air outside was suffocating, but at least it wasn't thick with her lies anymore. I got into the car, slammed the door shut, and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My chest heaved, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I let out a guttural scream, one that clawed its way up from the deepest pit of my soul. It wasn't just anger. It was grief. Grief for the life I thought I had, for the woman I thought I knew. I didn't even know where I was going, but my hands moved on their own, starting the engine. The sound of it roared in the quiet night as I pulled out of the driveway. Every mile that passed felt like I was peeling away another layer of the life I was leaving behind. I ended up at a park. It was empty, the kind of place that felt too big, too open when you were alone. I sat on a bench near the water, the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off the surface. And then my phone buzzed again. Megan. I stared at the screen, her name glowing like a ghost in the dark. She was relentless. I didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to hear her apologies, her excuses, her pleas. But then I thought of the folder on her laptop, the photos, the texts. I thought of Lucas and his smug grin. I didn't want to let her keep spinning the narrative. So I answered. What now? I said, my voice cold and flat. Ryan, she said, her voice shaky. Please, just listen to me. I've done enough listening, Megan. I interrupted. You've said plenty. And so has your laptop, by the way. Her breath hitched on the other end. What do you mean? I mean, I said, my voice sharp as a blade, that I saw the texts, the pictures, everything. So unless you have something to say that isn't a lie, I suggest you save your breath. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, uneven and frantic, like she was trying to think of what to say. You went through my laptop? She finally said, her voice trembling. Yeah, I said. And you know what? I'm glad I did, because it showed me exactly what I needed to see. Ryan, it's not what you think, she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Those pictures, they don't mean anything. And the texts, they're stupid. I wasn't thinking. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything? I said, my voice rising. You're telling me that you've been sneaking around, trashing me to him, flirting, meeting him in hotel rooms, and it didn't mean anything? It was a mistake, she cried. One mistake. I was lonely, and I made a stupid choice. But it's not what you think, Ryan. It's not like we, I swear we didn't. I barked out a laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. So now you're saying you didn't even cross that line? That it was all just, what? Harmless fun. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. I swear, Ryan. I swear on everything. I stopped it before it went too far. I told Lucas it was a mistake, and I've been trying to fix things ever since. I just didn't know how to tell you. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Do you honestly think I'm that stupid, Megan? That I'm just going to believe whatever crap you're feeding me because you're scared now? It's the truth, she insisted, her voice rising with desperation. I stopped it. I chose you, Ryan. I love you. You don't love me, I said, my voice cold. You love the idea of me, the stability, the comfort, but you don't love me, Megan. If you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Her sobs filled the silence, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no pity, just exhaustion. Ryan, please, she whispered. Please come home. Let's talk about this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job if I have to. Just, please don't give up on us. Us, I said, shaking my head. There is no us, Megan. Not anymore. Not after this. Her cries grew louder, and I could almost picture her, sitting in the same chair where I'd left her, broken and panicked. But I couldn't bring myself to care. Ryan, please. I ended the call and turned my phone off, tossing it onto the bench beside me. The weight of everything settled on my shoulders, heavy and suffocating. For years, I'd been the guy who always forgave. The guy who gave second chances, who believed in redemption, in fixing what was broken. But now I wasn't sure if there was anything left to fix. I stared out at the water, the reflection of the moon rippling on the surface, and felt the first tear slide down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger. It was relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in her shadow. I wasn't holding on to the illusion of a life we'd never really had. I was free. The following morning, I woke up in my car, parked outside the park where I'd spent the night. My neck was stiff, my body sore, and my mind quiet for the first time in hours. But it was a dangerous kind of quiet, the kind that feels like the calm before a storm. I drove home, not because I wanted to see Megan, but because I needed to grab some essentials. I wasn't planning on staying. This marriage, this house, this life, it wasn't mine anymore. When I walked in, the house was eerily still. No sound of Megan bustling in the kitchen or her soft humming. For a brief moment, I wondered if she'd left. The thought gave me a strange mix of relief and regret. Then I saw her. She was sitting at the dining table, her face pale, her hair a mess. A cup of untouched coffee sat in front of her. She looked up when she heard the door, and for a second her eyes lit up, like she thought I'd come back for her. I didn't say a word. I walked past her, heading straight for the bedroom. "Ryan," she called after me, her voice hoarse. "Please, can we talk?" I ignored her, grabbing a duffel bag from the closet and tossing clothes into it. Socks, shirts, a couple of pairs of jeans. I didn't care what I grabbed. I just wanted to get out. "Ryan," she said again, louder this time, her voice breaking. She appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You can't just walk away like this. We need to talk." I zipped up the bag and turned to her, my eyes cold. "Talk about what?" "How you cheated on me. How you lied to me for months. I think we've covered that." She flinched like I'd slapped her, tears welling up again. "I told you I was sorry. I told you I'd do anything to fix this." "Fix what?" I shot back. "You didn't break a vase, Megan. You shattered everything. There's nothing left to fix." I slung the bag over my shoulder and moved to leave, but her next words stopped me cold. "It's not just me, Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. I froze, turning slowly to face her. "What did you just say?" Her lip quivered, and she looked down, wringing her hands together. "It wasn't just me. Lucas, he said some things. About you." I stared at her, my stomach twisting into knots. "What the hell are you talking about?" She hesitated, then finally met my eyes. "Lucas told me things about you, about how you treated me. He said you didn't value me, that you were controlling." I blinked, completely blindsided. "Controlling," I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. "Where the hell is this coming from?" "He said he could see it," she said quickly, her words rushing out like she was trying to get ahead of my reaction. "The way you always want to know where I am, what I'm doing. The way you act like I belong to you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So let me get this straight. The guy you were sneaking around with, he's the one who told you I'm controlling? And you believed him?" "It wasn't just him," she said, her voice quieter now. "I started to notice it too. The way you always check my phone when it's lying around. The way you ask me a million questions if I'm late coming home." I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "You mean the way I trusted you? The way I thought we were partners, so I didn't think twice about asking where you were because I thought you'd be honest?" "Yeah, real controlling Megan." Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. "You want to talk about control?" I said, stepping closer, my voice rising. "Let's talk about how you controlled the narrative. How you made me feel like I was the bad guy every time I questioned something. How you manipulated me into thinking I was paranoid when the whole time you were screwing around with him." Her tears started to fall again, but they didn't move me. "Not anymore." "You didn't notice anything, Megan?" I said, my voice cold. "Lucas fed you that line because he wanted you to feel justified, because it made it easier for you to cross the line. And you let him. You let him twist things so you wouldn't have to face the fact that you're the one who ruined us." "I didn't want to ruin us," she cried, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake, Ryan. A horrible mistake. But I love you. I swear, I love you. Stop saying that, I snapped. You don't love me, Megan. You love the idea of me. You love the stability, the comfort, the security. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have let some guy poison you against me while you were sleeping in my bed and wearing the ring I gave you. She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. I turned away, my heart pounding. But just as I stepped out of the bedroom, something on the dresser caught my eye. A small, unfamiliar envelope, tucked behind the picture frame of us on our wedding day. I grabbed it, my curiosity piqued. Megan's sobs grew louder when she saw what I was holding. Ryan, don't, she said, her voice shaky and desperate. But I was already opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. And when I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a letter. It was a receipt for a luxury hotel, dated last week. My hand trembled as I stared at it, the final nail in the coffin of her lies. Megan, I said quietly, holding up the receipt. What the hell is this? She didn't answer, just stood there, her face pale and her eyes wide with panic. You said it didn't go that far, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You said it didn't mean anything. It didn't, she cried, her voice frantic. Ryan, I swear, stop lying. I roared, the sound exploding out of me like a thunderclap. I've heard enough of your lies. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't look at her anymore. I walked out of the house, the receipt still clenched in my fist. Whatever sliver of hope I'd been holding on to was gone. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that there was no coming back. And as I drove away, I realized something. I wasn't mourning her anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was ready to burn it all down. I didn't drive far. Just enough to clear my head, to get some distance between myself and the ruins of what used to be my life. I ended up in an empty parking lot outside a strip mall, staring at the crumpled receipt in my hand. My knuckles ached from how tightly I'd been gripping it. A week ago. She'd been with him at a hotel a week ago, while I was at home planning our anniversary, while I was out picking up that damn bracelet, while I was holding on to the belief that we were still solid. The sheer cruelty of it made my blood boil. I reached for my phone and turned it back on, the screen lighting up with a flood of missed calls and texts from Megan. I didn't bother reading them. I scrolled straight to Stacy's number, her best friend, the one who'd supposedly been covering for her during those late nights. She picked up after 2 rings. Ryan. Her voice was cautious, like she already knew why I was calling. Yeah, it's me, I said, my voice steady, razor sharp. We need to talk. Right now. Ryan, don't, I snapped. Don't try to defend her. Just tell me the truth. How long have you known about this? There was a long silence on the other end, and then she sighed. Look, Ryan, it's complicated. No. I cut her off, my voice ice cold. It's really not. Either you're going to tell me the truth, or I'm going to assume you've been lying to me too. So which is it, Stacy? Another pause, and then she broke. Fine, she said, her voice sharp. Yes, I knew. But it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. You knew she was cheating on me. You covered for her. You let me sit there like an idiot while she ran around with that piece of garbage. How the hell could you do that? Because she told me you wouldn't understand. Stacy shot back, her voice rising. She said you were controlling, that you didn't make her feel appreciated. She didn't want to hurt you, Ryan. But she didn't want to hurt me? I barked out a laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. Are you kidding me? She didn't want to hurt me, but she had no problem sneaking around, lying, and dragging you into it. What kind of friend are you, Stacy? Because you sure as hell weren't one to me. Her voice softened, almost pleading. Ryan, I didn't want to get involved, but she said she'd stop. She said she was going to fix things with you. Yeah? When exactly was she planning on that? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Before or after her little hotel rendezvous? Stacy went silent, and I knew I had her. That's what I thought, I said, hanging up before she could come up with another excuse. I sat there in the car, my hands gripping the wheel, my mind spinning. Everyone around me had been complicit. Stacy, Lucas, even Megan herself. They'd all played a part in this, and I was done being the nice guy. I wasn't going to let them sweep this under the rug. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. I pulled up Lucas's Instagram on my phone, scrolling through his feed until I found what I was looking for. Pictures of him and Megan. Most of them were innocent enough to pass as friendly. Shots of group dinners, office parties, but I recognized the little details now. The way she leaned into him. The way his hand hovered just a little too close to her waist. I screenshotted them all. Every single one. Then I went to my own Instagram. I hadn't posted much in months, but tonight was different. I uploaded a photo of the bracelet I'd bought her, the diamond catching the light in a way that felt mocking now. Beneath it, I typed a caption. For our 10th anniversary, I bought my wife a gift to celebrate our life together. Turns out she was too busy celebrating with someone else. Cheers to the truth coming out. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't kind. But I didn't care. I was done playing the fool. As soon as I hit post, the comments started pouring in. Friends, family, acquaintances. All of them shocked, confused, some offering support, others demanding to know what had happened. And then, less than an hour later, the text came. From Lucas. Take that post down. Now. I stared at it, my lips curling into a grim smile. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted another screenshot, a cropped version of one of their texts with just enough context to make it clear what had been going on. This time, Megan called. "What the hell are you doing, Ryan?" She screamed as soon as I answered. "What am I doing?" I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm making sure everyone knows who you really are, Megan. You don't get to destroy our life and walk away like nothing happened." "You're being petty," she hissed. "You're acting like a child. You're going to ruin my reputation." "Funny," I said, leaning back in my seat, "because you didn't seem too worried about ruining mine when you were sneaking around with Lucas. Maybe you should have thought about your reputation before you decided to cheat." She was silent for a moment, and then she said something that stopped me cold. "If you don't take it down," she said, her voice low and venomous, "I'll tell everyone it's your fault, that you were abusive, that you drove me to this." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd, so utterly pathetic, that I didn't know how else to react. "You go ahead and try that, Megan," I said, my voice like steel, "because I've got the texts, the photos, the receipts. Let's see how well your little story holds up when people see the truth." She hung up, and I sat there in the quiet, the storm inside me finally beginning to settle. For the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't expected. Control. They thought they could bury me. They thought they could spin their lies and walk away unscathed. But now the truth was out. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning. My phone was buzzing nonstop. My Instagram post had spread like wildfire. Friends, family, coworkers, even people I barely knew were messaging me. Some were shocked, some were supportive, and others were fishing for details, like vultures circling a fresh kill. I wasn't proud of airing my dirty laundry for the world to see, but the truth was a weight I couldn't carry alone anymore. And Megan? She'd built this pristine image of herself as the perfect wife, the loving partner. I wasn't going to let her hide behind that mask while I sat in the ashes of our marriage. The doorbell rang, jolting me out of my thoughts. When I opened it, I wasn't surprised to find Megan standing there, her face pale and drawn. She looked nothing like the confident, polished woman she pretended to be in public. "Ryan," she said, her voice shaky. "Can I come in?" I didn't move, keeping the door half closed. "Why are you here?" "Please," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. I need to talk to you. I need to fix this before it gets worse." I laughed bitterly. "Worse? Megan, it's already worse. You made sure of that." She flinched, but I stepped aside anyway, letting her in. I wasn't ready for this conversation, but I also wasn't afraid of it. Not anymore. She stood in the middle of the living room, wringing her hands. "You're destroying everything, Ryan. Do you even realize what you've done? Everyone is talking about us. My boss called me this morning. He said the photos are circulating at work." "Good," I said, crossing my arms. "Maybe Lucas can explain them to HR." Her face crumpled. I'm serious, Ryan. You've humiliated me. You've turned my life into a circus. Oh, I humiliated you? I snapped, stepping closer. You humiliated me, Megan. You turned me into a joke. You let me sit there, blind and stupid, while you carried on with Lucas. Don't come crying to me now because the truth finally caught up with you. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. And don't act like you're the victim here, I said, my voice rising. You made this mess, you and Lucas. So don't come here asking me to clean it up for you. Her tears spilled over, but they didn't soften me. I just want this to stop, she whispered. I want things to go back to the way they were. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Things will never go back to the way they were, Megan. You made sure of that. And honestly, I don't want them to. I don't want to be the guy who forgives you and pretends everything's fine while you stab me in the back. Her sobs grew louder, and she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she said, her voice muffled. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean for you to get caught, I said coldly. That's what this is really about. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got exposed. She didn't deny it. The silence between us was deafening, and for a moment, I thought she might finally leave. But then she looked up, her face streaked with tears, and said something that made my stomach turn. I can't lose everything, Ryan, she said, her voice desperate. If you don't take down the post, I'll tell everyone you cheated first. I'll say you've been abusive. That's why I turned to Lucas. I froze, her words slamming into me like a freight train. You'd really do that? I said quietly, my voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and rage. She didn't answer, just stared at me with those tear-filled eyes, as if she were daring me to call her bluff. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice low and steady. You cheated on me. You lied to me for months. And now, you're threatening to ruin my reputation to save your own. I don't want to, she said quickly, but you're giving me no choice. You've backed me into a corner, Ryan. I have to protect myself. Something inside me snapped. I walked over to the coffee table, grabbed the receipt from the hotel, now folded neatly, and tossed it at her feet. Go ahead, Megan, I said, my voice cold. Tell everyone I was the bad guy. Make up whatever story you need to sleep at night. But don't forget, I have the evidence. I have the texts, the photos, the receipts. So you better think long and hard before you try to rewrite history. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out again. But then she slumped back into the couch, defeated. You're going to destroy me, she whispered. No, Megan, I said, turning toward the door. You destroyed yourself. Without another word, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Another flood of notifications from Instagram. Another text from a friend, asking what the hell was going on. For the first time in days, I smiled. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was taking back control. And if Megan wanted to make me the villain in her story, I'd happily oblige. Because villains, they don't play by the rules. The storm hadn't passed. It had only gathered strength. By the next day, the fallout from my post had become a wildfire. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me, offering sympathy or quietly fishing for gossip. Some of Megan's friends had unfollowed me, which made me laugh. Megan? She'd gone silent. No calls, no texts. I figured she was regrouping, trying to figure out her next move. But I wasn't going to wait for her to make it. That's why, when Stacy called me that afternoon, I answered. Ryan, she said, her voice rushed, frantic. We need to talk. Now. What's there to talk about, Stacy? I said, my voice cold. Unless you're calling to apologize for being Megan's accomplice, I'm not interested. It's not that, she said quickly. I think you need to know something. About Lucas. Hearing his name was like a match to dry kindling. What about him? I snapped. There was a long pause, and then Stacy said, You're not the only one he's been screwing over, Ryan. Megan's not the only woman. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What the hell are you talking about? I didn't know at first, she said, her voice trembling. But after everything started blowing up, I did some digging. Lucas, he has a history. This isn't his first time doing this to someone's marriage. And Megan, she wasn't his only fling. Not even close. My grip on the phone tightened. You're saying he's been playing her, too? Exactly, Stacy said. He's a predator, Ryan. He finds women who are unhappy or vulnerable and tells them what they want to hear. And once he's had his fun, he moves on to the next one. The room felt like it was spinning. Does Megan know? I don't think so, Stacy admitted. But Ryan, you need to be careful. Lucas is manipulative as hell. If he feels like you're a threat, he won't hesitate to go after you. I'm not afraid of him, I said through gritted teeth. I know, she said. But just be smart about this. Don't give him ammunition. He's the kind of guy who'll twist the narrative until he comes out looking like the victim. I ended the call without saying goodbye, my blood boiling. If Stacy was right, Lucas wasn't just a cheater. He was a liar, a snake who thrived on chaos. And Megan, she'd fallen for it. But the part that burned the most? She still hadn't told me the whole truth. I had to see her. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just drove straight to the house, my heart pounding in my chest. When I walked in, she was sitting at the dining table again, staring blankly at her phone. She jumped when she saw me, her face pale. Ryan, she started, but I held up a hand. Save it, I said sharply. We're past apologies. I came here for answers, Megan. The real answers. No more lies. She swallowed hard, setting her phone down. I've told you everything. Bullshit, I snapped. I just got off the phone with Stacy. She told me about Lucas, about how you weren't the only one. So tell me, Megan, was it worth it? Was he worth throwing our marriage away for? Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. Did he promise you the world? I pressed, my voice rising. Did he make you feel special? Like you were the only woman he wanted? Because guess what, Megan? He's been playing you just like he's played everyone else. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she shook her head. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, Ryan, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said coldly. You wanted to believe his lies because it made it easier to justify what you were doing. But now you've got nothing. No husband, no marriage, and no Lucas. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. But I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. I came here to tell you something, I said, my voice cutting through her cries. I'm filing for divorce. First thing Monday morning. Her head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with panic. No, Ryan, please, she begged. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I'll prove to you that I'm sorry. It's too late, I said, shaking my head. You can't fix this, Megan. You can't undo the lies, the betrayal. And you sure as hell can't undo Lucas. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't stay to listen. I turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind me. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally free. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not with Megan. And not with Lucas. 2 days later, I sat in the lawyer's office, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in front of me. The divorce papers were spread across the desk, a stark reminder of the life I was about to leave behind. Everything seems pretty straightforward, the lawyer said, flipping through the pages. Given the circumstances, you're in a strong position. The evidence you provided, the texts, the receipts, makes your case rock solid. I nodded, but the satisfaction was hollow. This wasn't victory. This was triage. Once you sign here, he said, pointing to the final page, we'll file it immediately. She'll be served within the week. My hand hovered over the pen. Not because I doubted my decision, I didn't, but because this moment marked the end of a chapter one never thought would close like this. I signed. When I left the office, I turned my phone back on and saw the barrage of notifications waiting for me. Megan had been relentless, leaving voicemails, sending texts, even reaching out to mutual friends to plead her case. I deleted them all without listening or reading. She had nothing left to say that I needed to hear. But there was one message that stopped me cold. It was from Lucas. Meet me. Tonight. You know where. Let's settle this like men. For a moment, I considered ignoring him. What did I owe him? Anyway, But then I thought about everything he'd taken from me. The lies, the manipulation, the smug way he'd sat across from me in that cafe, knowing exactly what he was doing. I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. That evening, I arrived at the bar Lucas had suggested. It was a dimly lit dive, the kind of place where no one asks questions, no matter how heated things get. I spotted him immediately, sitting in a corner booth with a whiskey in hand. His tie loosened like he'd just come from work. When he saw me, he smirked and gestured for me to sit. I didn't. "You've got 5 minutes," I said, standing over him. "Say what you came to say." He leaned back, taking a slow sip of his drink. "I'll admit, you've got balls, Ryan," he said, his voice calm and oozing with condescension. "Most guys in your position would have folded by now. But you went nuclear. Posting all that crap online? Bold move." "Get to the point," I said coldly. His smirk widened. "The point is, you don't know what you're dealing with. You think you can drag me down with you, but I've been through worse. People like me, we always come out on top. People like you," I said, my voice steady, "are parasites. You latch onto people's weaknesses, exploit their insecurities, and then move on when there's nothing left to take. You don't come out on top, Lucas. You just leave destruction in your wake." His eyes narrowed slightly, but the smirk didn't falter. "Call me what you want, but let's not pretend you're some saint. You weren't exactly keeping your wife happy. Now, were you?" I clenched my fists, but I refused to take the bait. "You think this is a game," I said quietly. "You think you've won because you got away with it. But let me tell you something. The truth has a way of catching up with people like you." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You're wasting your breath, Ryan. You're out of moves. The best thing you can do is walk away and let this die quietly." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a low growl. "Oh, I'm not done. You see, Lucas, I've got more than texts and photos. I've got people watching. Colleagues. Char. I made sure every single thing you've done is on their radar. Your little games? They're over." For the first time, his smirk faltered. "You think you're untouchable, but let's see how confident you are when the investigations start. When your bosses start digging into your behavior. When every woman you've harassed or manipulated steps forward. You don't just lose the game, Lucas. You lose everything." His jaw tightened, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. I straightened up, adjusting my jacket. "Enjoy your whiskey. It might be the last thing you can afford for a while." Without another word, I turned and walked out of the bar, leaving him sitting there, his mask of arrogance cracking. By the time I got home, the weight that had been crushing me for weeks finally began to lift. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. Megan was gone, Lucas was unraveling, and I was free. Free to rebuild. Free to start over. And as I sat in the quiet of my empty house, I realized something. The pain was still there, but it wasn't a weight anymore. It was a scar. A reminder of what I'd survived. And survival, that was the first step toward something better.